It began in silence, not the peaceful quiet of a sleeping town, but the thick, suffocating hush of something unnatural. It was January 14th, 2003. Tuesday, the kind of night where the air burned your throat and snowflakes crackled under every step like broken glass in the small northern Michigan town of Grayridge. The wind cut across frozen fields and wrapped around shuttered houses. Porch lights flickered against the dusk. Somewhere between the middle school and her front door, 15-year-old Haley Brandt disappeared. Time of last contact, 6:17 p.m. She sent a text to her mum. On my way home. Estimated time to walk from school to her house, 10 minutes. She never arrived. By 6:45, her mother, Corinne, was pacing the front window. Phone pressed to ear. Dialing voicemail, redialing again. It wasn't like Haley. She wasn't the just hang out after school type. She was punctual, predictable, innocent. Corinne stepped outside, clutching her coat closed with one hand, scanning the street. Steam rose from her breath. Lights shone from the snow-dusted living rooms lining the block. But not a trace of Haley. Anina Sessensu 3 p.m. Her voice broke across the 911 dispatcher's line. Hi. My daughter said she was walking home. She always walks. She should have been here 40 minutes ago. I think something's wrong. By around 7:27 p.m., police were on the ground. Flashing lights bled red and blue into the snowbanks. Volunteers gathered quickly, a part of the community's rhythm. People showed up when one of their own went missing. Search teams fanned out from Haley's last known GPS ping, a half-block from Brookwood Trail, a narrow, tree-lined footpath children often used as a shortcut when the sidewalks froze over. And there, in the snow, were her footprints, small, spaced closely. Walking with purpose, they trailed off the sidewalk across the salt-stained curb and onto the trail. Gray pine needles lay half-buried in the ice. Cigarette butts, old wrappers. Evidence of teenage shortcuts and adult neglect. The footprints continued into the dark grove. Then, abruptly, they stopped. There were no signs of a struggle. No drag marks. No scuffed trail. No second set of prints, just a perfect pause. Like the girl had vanished mid-step. A scent dog was brought in by 8:15 p.m. The handler recalled how the Labrador sniffed the spot where the tracks vanished and began circling. Confused. No direction to go. No wind to carry a trail. Just cold. Haley's name was shouted into the forest. Flashlights cut through branches. Phones buzzed. Radios crackled. Nothing by 10:00 p.m. Sergeant Calloway wrote in the first official report. Teen possibly abducted. No suspect description. No vehicle seen, but a statement quietly logged and nearly forgotten mentioned something curious. A town utility worker, driving his salt truck down Brookwood Drive around 6:25 p.m., noticed a car idling near the trailhead. Headlights off, engine on. No license plate remembered. No driver described. Just one sentence casually marked down in the margin. Odd place to stop. It would be 19 years before that car would matter again. In those early hours, the worst part wasn't what people found. It was what they didn't. The footprints, so sharp and specific moments before, ended abruptly in the fresh snow. No exit trail, no clue. No goodbye, her phone silent, her bag missing, her heartbeat unheard. How does a girl vanish from her own neighborhood? Halfway across a 7-minute walk. How does someone disappear? Without a trace. Into frozen air. The search intensified. Panic began to build. The questions had only just begun. But in this town, a terrible truth was starting to settle into the frost. Haley Brandt was gone, and whatever took her left no trail behind. Before the searchlights, before the headlines, before her name turned into a case file. Haley Brandt was just Haley. She was 15, a sophomore at Grayridge High. Long auburn hair she never liked. She said it was too flat, too red. But everyone else thought it glowed in the sunlight like fire beneath snow. She loved drawing in the margins of her notebooks, thick-lined sketches of mountain skylines and wolves. She played clarinet in the school band, never first chair and didn't mind. She once told her English teacher she didn't care about being the best. She just didn't want to be forgotten. Haley belonged to a town where people believed bad things happened. Elsewhere, Grayridge, Michigan. Population just under 9,000. One high school. One library. Two diners, both proudly homemade. The kind of place where street names don't change, where cops wave instead of pulling you over. Winters were long here, brutal, but somehow beautiful. Snow-blanketed lawns like time had stopped. Teenagers skated on the frozen pond behind Holloway Church. Families gathered for Christmas parades that turned Main Street into a tunnel of lights. People left their front doors unlocked. They greeted cashiers by name. And even when families struggled, and some did, there was this unspoken belief: you're safe here. Haley's mother, Corinne, worked nights as a nurse at the urgent care clinic. Her father, Damien, left before Haley could pronounce divorce. Corinne did what she could, shoveling snow before sunrise, typing medical notes on her nights off. In every way that mattered, she's the reason Haley smiled so easily. Her best friend, Josie Mirek, lived 2 blocks away. They walked the same shortcut through Brookwood Trail almost every weekday after school, no matter the weather. Winter coats zipped up, earbuds split between them. Fighting over playlists. Haley liked acoustic. Josie swore by punk, but Haley didn't take the shortcut with Josie that day. January 14, 2003 was a Tuesday. Josie had detention for skipping gym class, so Haley walked the trail alone, texting "Miss you loser" when school let out. That message was never answered. To everyone who knew her, Haley was the good one, the dependable one, the one you call when you forget your homework or need a partner for class. She had no enemies, no secrets known to anyone, no boyfriends, no double life. A normal girl from a normal town taking a normal walk home, the kind of safety that breeds silence, the kind of silence that hides things. When the police started knocking on doors that night, people couldn't help but glance at their neighbors a little longer. She's probably just hiding out at a friend's. Someone told the cashier at Miller's grocery before the news spread. "Wider, I saw her at the library this afternoon," whispered a girl at the vigil, eyes wide. Voice trembling, but behind the calm unease stirred. Officers canvassed the neighborhood and quickly realized there was no one who saw Haley after school. Not a single confirmed sighting outside the building. That short distance, 3.5 blocks, may as well have been the edge of the world, and the trail. The shortcut, the footpath between pastures and frozen woods, now felt different, wrong. What once was familiar was now stained by absence, and somewhere just beyond the line where footsteps disappeared, something waited. Something unnatural in this place where nothing unnatural ever happened. But things were already beginning to unravel. Because that night would change Grayridge forever, and the girl everyone thought they knew would soon become a mystery no one could solve. It was the kind of cold you feel in your teeth. Tuesday, January 14th, 2003. The skies were overcast, thick with hanging steel-grey clouds. By early afternoon, flakes had started to fall, light at first, then heavier by 5 p.m., blanketing Grayridge in a fresh half-inch of powder. School let out at 6 sharp that evening. Band rehearsal had run late. Security footage from the gym hallway showed Haley Brandt walking alone, backpack slung over her shoulder, white beanie pulled low. She smiled at someone behind the camera, unseen, and waved. Nothing about her demeanor indicated panic or fear. Outside, the temperature hovered at 19 degrees. The light was fading. The clip ended with her boots crunching across the salted entrance of Grayridge High. Heading toward home, at a 6:12 p.m., she passed the corner of Mill and Fraser. A gas station security camera caught the edge of her silhouette for just a few frames. You wouldn't notice it if you weren't looking. Papa ma. She sent what would be her final message. On my way home. It arrived on her mother's Motorola flip phone just as Corinne was making dinner, leftover stew thawing on the stovetop. They lived just over a quarter mile away. Around between Celia, Haley turned down Jefferson Avenue and approached the start of Brookwood Trail, the shortcut between the houses and the tree line. It was rarely lit, but everyone in town used it, at least during daylight. At night it was quiet. Isolated, surrounded by woods on both sides, the snow muffled every sound. It was a walk designed by routine. Done 100 times before, then nothing. She never made it the rest of the way. At 6:32 p.m. Corinne checked the clock again. She stepped outside, her jacket only half on. Freezing air hit her lungs. By 6:45, She was calling neighbors, then Haley's phone. Straight to voicemail. She walked the route herself. Her footsteps fast, then frantic, by the 6:54 p.m. She flagged down a passing patrol car. The officer, Mike Dempsey, would later say, "I could see it on her face right away, panic, pure panic. We get runaways, sure, teens disappearing for a few hours, but this was different." Police scanned the school perimeter and retraced her likely path from the footage provided. When they reached the trail entrance around 7:15 p.m., the snow was untouched, except for a single trail of recent footsteps. They followed them into the dark. The boots were consistent with her pair, found in photos and accounts later that week. Mud-colored Uggs, a popular choice at the time, with a distinct heart crease on the outer heel. The steps traced a clean line and then stopped. Near a bend in the trail, just before the tree line thickened, the prints ceased. There were no skid marks, no blood, not even disrupted brush. Snow lay over the ground in a soft, untouched crust beyond that final footprint. The presence of nothing was louder than sound. Investigators marked the site. Photos were taken. Dogs were brought in. Within the hour, floodlights lit up the area like a stadium. Nothing could be found. A glove. Not torn, not dropped, folded neatly on a stump just a few feet away. Whether it was hers or not remained unclear for years. Nothing else. At 8:03 p.m., a power surge cut out the traffic light 2 blocks away. For a moment, the entire street went dark. The final confirmed sighting, that surveillance blip near the gas station, would later prove critically important, because between 6:17 and 7:04 p.m., something or someone crossed Haley's path. Inside that 47-minute window, she vanished completely. Not one scream, no witness reports, no one heard a car leave. The woods swallowed everything. It wasn't yet a murder. It wasn't yet a crime. It was just a silence that no one could explain. And soon, a single question would start to echo across every home and hallway in Grayridge. Where was Haley Brandt? For the first 3 days, nothing in Grayridge felt real. The town moved like it was underwater. Everything muffled, every sound dull under the weight of snow and dread. The ground frozen, the trees motionless, the air tense. By dawn on January 15th, the posters were already up. Have you seen Haley Brandt? Age 15, last seen wearing a white beanie. Navy blue parka, jeans. Last text sent at 6:17 p.m., Tuesday. The words "missing" printed in desperate caps above her high school photo, taken just 3 months prior. Bright smile. Head slightly tilted. Eyes full of plans, but plans don't matter when time freezes. By 9 a.m., the school opened the gymnasium as a search headquarters. Coffee urns steamed beside folding tables stacked with flyers. Maps were unrolled. Assignments given. Search volunteers came in waves. Neighbors with flashlights, retired firemen, teenagers dressed too lightly for the weather. More than 200 people combed the woods along Brookwood Trail. Drones hadn't become standard yet. Thermal imaging was limited to county resources. That meant boots on the snow. Walking, calling, watching. Haley! Haley, honey, it's Mrs. Kinney from English. If you're hurt, make a sound. We're here. Search dogs returned again that morning. Bramble, a trained bloodhound with nosework experience in missing person cases, was brought in by Lieutenant Donnelly with the state police. At exactly Sebin 10:42 am, Bramble caught a scent near the trail's dead end. He barked once, circled, barked again, but he couldn't pursue. The scent led nowhere. It was almost as if the trail vanished mid-path. News vans circled Grayridge by midday. Microphones poked through hedges. Local reporters asked difficult questions and got no answers. By hour 20, the case had a formal command structure. Sergeant Matthew Calloway, 49 years old, 25 on the force, known for his meticulous attention to detail, took lead. He had worked missing children cases before, but none this close to home. He told his team later that afternoon, no forced entry, no dropped items, no vehicle description. This wasn't messy. It was clean. Too clean. The house, of course, had been ruled out immediately. No one believed she'd run away. Her backpack wasn't found in her room. Her phone was off, not dead, but powered down. That distinction haunted investigators. At a mere 4:11 p.m., a new piece of information came in. A teenage boy had passed by the trail around past 6:30 p.m., the night before on his way home from tutoring. He reported seeing a white car, or was it pale blue, parked by the trailhead. No tags, no faces. Just headlights off and engine running. It matched what the salt truck driver mentioned the night before. Still, nothing came of it. No one had seen who was behind the wheel. The lead, like the footprints, went cold. Haley Brandt, meanwhile, refused to sleep. She stayed in the kitchen with the lights on. She left her phone volume at maximum, just in case. Their small dining table was buried in papers. Haley's class schedule, scribbled timelines, faces of her daughter across 20 versions of the same flyer. She blinked through tears that didn't fall anymore. In her gut, she already knew. On day 2, the state approved helicopter support. It made no difference. Between the snowfall and tree coverage, visibility from the air was useless. She wasn't lying hurt somewhere in plain sight. There was no trail, there was just a gap, right in the middle of a walk she had taken dozens of times before. Nothing stolen, nothing broken, just a 15-year-old girl stepping off the map. And as the 72-hour window approached, the fear began to bloom into something much darker. Not a runaway, not a prank, but something deliberate, something human. On the 3rd night, they lit candles, hundreds of them. Each flame flickered against the glassy wind, lined up along the steps of Grayridge High. Teachers stood beside students. Parents brought old blankets and thermoses of cocoa. Someone passed out teal ribbons. Teal was Haley's favorite color. They prayed, or tried to, but the town was beginning to split quietly beneath the surface of its frost. Not with violence, with suspicion, because when someone goes missing in a place like Grayridge, people start to talk. At first, it was kind-hearted, naive. Maybe she hitched a ride and got stuck with car trouble. Maybe she met someone online, just wants attention. Those whispered comforts didn't last. By the 5th day, theories twisted into gossip. Maybe it was that boy who liked her, the one from geometry. That janitor they hired last month, he gives me a weird feeling. I never trusted that new neighbor who moved in from Lansing. What's his name again? Whispers chased shadows, and shadows became stories. The local hardware store stopped selling duct tape and rope the moment someone posted online that the police were tracking a possible stalker. They weren't. But in the fog of uncertainty, rumor passed as fact. Pastors gave sermons about fear and family. Teachers started locking classroom doors. Every parked van became a question. Every hoodie in the hallway, a threat. And then came the flyers. What once was familiar was now stained by absence, and somewhere, just beyond the line where footsteps disappeared, something waited. Something unnatural in this place where nothing unnatural ever happened, but things were already beginning to unravel. Anonymous black and white leaflets slipped under windshield wipers, taped to mailboxes, left at the grocery store checkouts. No one knew who made them or how they spread. The message was always the same. She's closer than you think. Some were hand-lettered, others printed. Some creased with age, like they'd waited in someone's drawer for too long. A few had a blurry photo of Haley attached. Police tried to trace them. No fingerprints, no surveillance footage. Just one more puzzle in a story already collapsing under its own weight. At each vigil, the crowd grew quieter. No one knew what to say anymore. The optimism was thinning. The parents tried to keep faith, but their words sounded like glass cracking under boots. At the January 20th school assembly, Principal Carver stood before the student body, a photo of Haley projected behind him. "What matters," he said, "is that we hold on to the light of who she is, not the darkness of where she went." But it was too late. The darkness had already taken hold. No one wanted to admit it out loud, but they all felt it. The idea that the person responsible wasn't some distant figure, but maybe someone at that very vigil. A coach, a parent, a friend of a friend. Someone with clean fingernails and a polite smile. Someone standing right beside them. The town was slipping into fear. Because when the facts grow cold, all that's left are flames of speculation, and the smoke they carry can cover almost anything. When Sergeant Matthew Calloway first stepped into the frozen woods behind Brookwood Trail, he had no idea this place, this one perfect vanishing point, would follow him for 19 years. He stood over the last visible footprint. The snow crusted around it like a fossil of a life interrupted. I remember thinking, Calloway later told an interviewer, this was either going to be solved in the next 48 hours or never. Turns out he was almost right. Calloway wasn't flashy. He didn't give sound bites or chase headlines. At 49, he was meticulous, a combed-back hairline and a weathered notepad tucked in the pocket of every coat he owned. He believed in paper trails, timelines, shoe-size mapping. Believed that if a door could be knocked on once, it could be knocked again with a better question. But even he couldn't shake the contradictions of this case. Where were the signs? No violence, no witnesses, no chaos. The simplicity terrified him more than any other possibility. There was a working theory in the first week. Someone cut across the trail from the other side, waited for her just out of sight. Knew her path, knew her timing. Drove her away before the snow could remember. It sounded clean, too clean. But Calloway couldn't stop fixating on one micro-detail listed in the report from the salt truck driver, a white sedan idling near the path. That statement stayed pinned to his board, circled 3 times in ink. Thin lead, quiet engine, maybe steel wheels for the ice. No one recalled the make. No plate number. Still, to Calloway, it felt like a locked door with no key. He called every registered vehicle reported stolen in a 5-county radius that week. 63 in total, including one Dodge Neon repainted in a barn. Nothing linked. Nothing stuck. Each tip brought false hope. There was the local teen with a record for stalking his ex-classmate. Brought in, cleared, a traveling out-of-state trucker who passed through town that night. Interrogated, ruled out. Then the janitor rumor. Reached his desk, the one from the high school who disappeared 2 months earlier. Traced to Terre Haute, Indiana. Alibi confirmed. Another dead end. Weeks turned into months. Then seasons. A full year passed. And still Calloway couldn't let it go. He kept Haley's case file on his nightstand. Reviewed it every birthday she didn't have. Playlists burned from her MP3 player. Class schedules. Her dentist receipts. That fall he drove the route she took over and over, timing every step between camera sightings. I walked it more than 30 times, he said years later, trying to see what she saw, feel what she could have felt. In 2005, when the department suggested closing the active investigation and moving it to cold case status, Calloway refused. He took fewer vacations. Missed his daughter's winter recitals. Twice forgot his wife's birthday. He stopped being a husband, a father, a friend. He became something else, a vessel for this case, because something about the neatness of Haley's disappearance didn't read like chance. It felt constructed, designed. A predator's perfect plan, wearing the mask of blank snow. In his case journal, scribbled radiolog ink fading, he wrote a single sentence underlined 3 times. The killer is from here. He watched her. He planned it, and no one is looking in the right place. But obsession doesn't solve cases. Not on its own, all it does is sharpen the silence. And soon enough, the town moved on. But Calloway didn't, not for a moment. Because while the rest of Grayridge tried to forget Haley Brandt, he knew somewhere someone was counting on exactly that. Time didn't stop in Grayridge. It just slowed, and then hardened. By 2006, Haley Brandt's disappearance had become a memory people winced to remember. The posters faded. The candles burned out. The news cycle moved on. But the silence remained, settling deep into the corners of the town like frost in old concrete. And the investigation? It fractured. The case went cold officially. Files boxed, evidence shelved, timeline stored with faint pencil markings left behind by hands that no longer knocked on doors. Not completely forgotten, but quietly ignored. False hope came in cycles. It always started the same way. A phone call from out of town, a quiet voice claiming a sighting, a strange man on a bus in Ohio, a blurry photo uploaded to a missing persons forum. Case reopened. File dusted off. Nothing confirmed. No Haley. There was the man from Sault Ste. Marie, mid-40s, traveling alone, found with zip ties and a GPS ping history that showed a route past Grayridge in 2003. He matched enough. Descriptions to warrant a full background investigation. He had never left Ontario during that winter. Another name crossed off the board. There was the janitor again. Yes, him. For years his name circled back. Loitering charges resurfaced in 2 states. Calloway even drove to Terre Haute. Spent 3 hours in a freezing diner watching the man pour sugar into his coffee with shaking hands. Nothing. Connected. Then came the mysterious letters, and one each in 2009 and 2011, postmarked from 2 towns 3 states apart. Both handwritten. Same phrasing. I saw her that night. You're not looking at your own. They led nowhere. No fingerprints. No DNA. Just graphite over guilt. Privately, Calloway wondered if the writer was telling the truth, or just one more cruel soul poisoning wounded families for no reason but their own sickness. Meanwhile, the Brandt family withered. Corinne stopped speaking to reporters after 2010. She told her sister during a Thanksgiving call it was only her 2nd phone conversation. That year that she still imagined Haley was out there. Maybe taken? Maybe brainwashed? I don't know, but I can't imagine her dead. If I do that, then I'm done. Josie Mirek, Haley's best friend, left town for college. She never moved back. She once wrote in an anonymous blog entry years later, "It was like a line down my life before she vanished." After she vanished, I still expect her arm to flick me in the hallway when I hear that one stupid Avril Lavigne song. Life scattered. The cold case collected dust, but the case remained active in a stubborn, technical way. Every few years a new detective was rotated in. Most reviewed the file, ran a few procedural checks, checked in with the Brandt family and moved on, except Calloway. Retired in 2012, but never truly left. Haley's file never stopped haunting him, and somewhere in that towering wall of dead tips, irrelevant names and empty scenarios, lay one mistake. 2 paragraphs missed, a clue skimmed over. But it would take someone else, an outsider years later, to see what Calloway had grown too close to spot. Because sometimes the truth waits outside the margins. Behind the redacted names, in the overlooked bag of soil-stained items, in the assumptions everyone agreed never to question. For nearly 2 decades, the case was kept alive only through memory, pain, and quiet obsession. Each year, an officer placed a white rose under the rusting missing sign at the trailhead, and each year, fewer people noticed, but evidence doesn't age like people do it. Waits, and in the summer of 22, almost 20 years to the day, since Haley disappeared, one sealed plastic bag tucked inside box, C-47 would finally reach a new set of eyes. It shouldn't have meant anything, but buried in that overlooked evidence envelope was the key to everything. Grief doesn't grow, it calcifies. By the 10th winter without Haley, the Brandt home on Jefferson Avenue looked unchanged. Same white siding, same crooked mailbox. But the inside had frozen in time. Her bedroom remained untouched. Posters still clung to the pastel dust on her dresser, frayed now, beside a dead cell phone. Lord of the Rings that once sent its final plan. Hopeful calendar still marked driver's test soon. Corinne Brandt stopped celebrating her birthday after 2004. She lived now in the in-between, still working as a nurse, taking triple shifts, existing in silence that no one dared interrupt, because no one knew what to say anymore. Friends stopped inviting her over. Neighbors, once full of casseroles and theories, went quiet. Time didn't heal. It distanced. She never moved. Something in her refused to leave in case Haley came back and needed her. The porch light was always on. Even during power outages, she kept a flashlight in the upstairs window. Pointed toward the trailhead, she kept Haley's toothbrush in the bathroom, her clarinet in the corner by the radiator. She even kept Haley's school ID in her wallet, so if it was ever needed for identification, she could hand it over without having to look. What made it worse was the silence, the damn silence of Grayridge after the police stopped calling. No updates, no breakthroughs, just a polite annual letter in the mail. We regret that there are currently no new developments to report regarding the ongoing investigation into the disappearance of your daughter, Haley Brandt. In her lowest moments, Corinne started to believe Haley was outside the bounds of the living entirely. Not dead, not alive. Just missing in some other place only mothers can imagine. A punished fate. Not for Haley, but for her. She began journaling but never used her daughter's name in the entries. Instead, it was the silence or the empty room. She wore the same scarf each January. The last one Haley had given her. It smelled faintly of vanilla lotion and teenage shampoo. She never washed it, but re-entry into living never came. There were GoFundMe campaigns early on, candlelight vigils for anniversaries 1 through 5, even a TV segment on a regional true crime show, Missing in the Midwest in 2009. But by year 12, even the local paper ran no updates. Cold cases don't just die, they embarrass people. No one wants to keep echoes on the front page. Josie sent one letter from California in 2016. I still dream we're walking home. I always wake up before the end. I think that's mercy. Corinne wrote back once it was 6 words. I think she hears us, Joe. But the longer it went on, the harder it became for anyone outside that bedroom to believe it. And that's what trauma becomes over time. Not a headline. Not a horror story. But a dull ache, a rotting hope, a locked door waiting for a knock that never comes until one summer. The knock finally did. The breakthrough didn't arrive with sirens or confessions. It came as a calibrated beep from a lab scanner, one practically buried under 2 decades of dust. The year was 2022. The technology new. The evidence? Old A case file, long archived, had been redistributed for digital backlog review. Michigan's Criminal Case Reconciliation Program had recently partnered with a genealogy lab in Lansing, one of many across the country, using forensic phenotyping, touch DNA profiling, and familial tracing. It was slow work, unromantic, but it worked. A junior technician, 27-year-old Devin Marks, opened a specimen packet from the Haley Brandt case, labeled C47B7. It was part of secondary bagged items retrieved near Brookwood Trail, tested originally in 2003, deemed contaminated, inconclusive, at the time due to environmental exposure. Inside was a knit glove, not torn, not blood-stained, just folded. Suspicion lingered all those years. Was it hers? Was it relevant? Or just a discarded item by some passerby? The preserved glove was retested with modern methods, MVAC wet vacuum DNA extraction, capable of lifting genetic traces invisible to prior technologies. To most, it would have been routine. To Calloway, who had never stopped following updates even in retirement, it was everything. A partial, degraded genetic profile was extracted. Just a fragment, only assigned usable markers, but enough for a match. At first, no named individual came up in CODIS, the National DNA Database. No known offender. But that wasn't the goal. 2022 had changed everything. Across the country, cold cases weren't just revisited, they were reverse engineered, using family trees as evidence. The glove's trace was run through a genetic genealogy match program, analyzing public ancestry databases like GED Match and Family Tree DNA. Within the 6 weeks, a match appeared, a second cousin residing in Ohio. The process then spiraled backward, not forward, creating a web of grandparents, siblings, marriages, children, until a narrowed search revealed only 3 viable male relatives Kamantsian within the right age bracket. One name stood out, one that, ironically, had never been interviewed 19 years earlier: Mark Donnelly. A long-time Grayridge resident. Lived just 6 blocks from Brookwood Trail in 2003. Clean record. No prior arrests. Civically active for most of his life. A Sunday school teacher. A former youth sports volunteer. No one had suspected him. No one had asked Calloway. Called in as a consultant by sheer happenstance, after pushing for genealogy reviews for years, knew they needed more than the DNA. A warrant wouldn't stick on partial touch DNA alone. Public genealogy still rode the edge of admissibility, but the scent was back. Investigators covertly surveilled Donnelly over the next 2 weeks. Watched his roots, his habits. Collected discarded items, a plastic water bottle left behind on a park bench, a cigarette stub tossed outside a coffee shop near the lake. DNA was extracted. The match? 93% certainty. The same man who walked Grayridge's food drives, who spoke at town cleanup events, whose face was captured in archival footage, wearing teal and holding a candle in the first vigil for Haley. It wasn't a stranger. It wasn't a drifter. It was someone who had lived among them the entire time. When news of the match reached Calloway, now grey-haired and reclusive, he sat in silence, the report clenched in his hand. 19 years. He whispered one word to himself. Finally. The next steps moved quickly now. The shadows were dissolving, and soon, Grayridge would learn who had been walking beside them in peace, while holding a child's secret in his hands. The man who had haunted an entire town for 19 years had been holding the door for neighbors after Sunday service. Mark Donnelly, 57 years old, lived on Cedar Loop, not far from the Brandt home, less than half a mile. A white one-story house with blue shutters and a trimmed yard. The kind of house you'd describe with one word: safe. He coached youth basketball for 3 winters, taught Sunday school for middle schoolers, helped deliver meals to seniors during lockdown, attended every candlelight vigil for Haley, 8 years in a row. In photos, he's smiling, cordial, forgettable in the most comforting way. The parents remembered him as dependable, quiet, but good-natured. The kids remembered little, just a man who tossed out candy during Halloween parades. He was never questioned in 2003, never even appeared once on the suspect list. Why would he? He had no record, no proximity alert from early witness reports. He wasn't part of the stranger danger warnings spread in school newsletters. Back then, Donnelly worked part-time at an auto upholstery shop, one that backed up against an empty lot less than 300 yards from Brookwood Trail. Around the time of Haley's disappearance, he told colleagues he was house-sitting for his cousin near Traverse City. That alibi was taken at face value, never verified. The simple truth was this: he didn't attract suspicion because he never gave anyone a reason until now. Following the DNA match, investigators dredged up every sliver of his past, every record, every phone number, every work hour logged the week Haley vanished, and one item in particular stood out: a white Sangstein 996 Chevrolet Corsica. Once registered to Donnelly, had been sold out of state in April 2003, 3 months after Haley disappeared. The old salt truck driver's memory, nearly dismissed 2 decades ago, had mentioned a white or pale blue car parked idly near the trail. The description fit. On August 19, 2022, authorities moved in quietly. The arrest wasn't loud. No barricade, no chase, no camera crews. At 6:23 a.m., Mark Donnelly stepped outside to retrieve the morning paper from his porch. 2 unmarked surveillance cars caught his last moments of freedom. Federal units with local support, mug in hand, bathrobe gently swaying. He looked out toward the pine line where the sun was just beginning to break. He didn't struggle, didn't resist, didn't ask. Why? He simply nodded. He already knew. That night, the news broke. In living rooms and offices across Grayridge, jaws went slack. Phones buzzed. Mothers woke daughters with shaking hands. Haley's old classmates, now adults, stared blankly at photos where the man once blended into the background. He sat behind us during that first memorial. Josie wrote on social media. He hugged my mom. Said he'd pray for peace no matter the truth. Corinne didn't speak to reporters that first day, but later friends said she stood in the bedroom doorway, gripping the frame, whispering through long-held tears. I knew. I knew it was someone close. Some neighbors took it personally, furiously so. How had they missed it? How could a killer smile in potlucks and PTA meetings? But the mask had done its job. Even now, looking at his mugshot, sunken eyes, crow's feet, ordinary features, there's nothing that screams predator. That perhaps was always his weapon. He didn't need to hide in the shadows. He stood right beside them, not a monster. Neighbor. And the truth still had more to tell because 19 years of silence was about to break and Donnelly was ready to talk. The room was small, 4 walls, windowless, sterile. Mark Donnelly sat at the metal table in interview room 2 of the Grayridge County Sheriff's Office. Fingernails clean, wrists relaxed. No cuffs. Across from him sat Special Agent Lauren Petrowski, calm, precise, a veteran in cold case resolutions, flanked by Detective Eric Medina, young, newly assigned to the department, hand still trembling above his legal pad. A camera in the corner rolled silently. Timestamp, 7:46 a.m. They began with routine introductions, small prefatory remarks meant to chip the tension. But Donnelly didn't respond. Not much, at least. 4 words spoken twice in the first 2 hours. I don't remember anything. That was his line. That was the defense. Petrowski leaned in and opened the file. She laid it all out. The forensic match from the glove, the DNA from his discarded bottle, the similarities in timelines, vehicle records, the property he once leased near the trail. Each piece stacked like bricks on a foundation long hidden beneath snow. Still he said nothing. Time passed in increments only known to men with things to hide. A bead of sweat formed above his eyebrow. His legs didn't bounce. His hands didn't twitch. He seemed resigned. Then she placed a photo on the table, the same one used on every missing poster from 2003, Haley's sophomore portrait in soft lighting. "She trusted you," Petrowski said quietly. "We know she did." Silence again, but something changed. Donnelly exhaled, a subtle surrender, a breath not of exhaustion but recognition. Hour 4. Timestamp 11:09 a.m. He spoke. "It wasn't supposed to happen like that," and everything unraveled, piece by piece. Donnelly described what happened that night. He'd seen her plenty before, Haley, always walking with that same group of girls, talkative, unbothered, too trusting. He noticed her routine, the shortcut she took through Brookwood Trail, how she adjusted her backpack strap every 20 yards. He claimed he meant only to scare her. No plan beyond that, no weapon. He parked the car off Brookwood Drive, lights off. When she stepped onto the trail alone, he emerged from the trees, said something about needing help. "My niece is lost," he told her. She hesitated, but not for long. She was kind, he said. Too kind. She agreed to walk with him to the road, where he said his phone was in the car. She followed him, slowly, warily. She never made it back. He said he panicked, that she got scared, that she tried to run. He grabbed her arm. She slipped. The rest he wouldn't clarify. No. He said he didn't bury her. No, he didn't remember where it had happened. Yes. He put something over her face. No answer when asked why he didn't just leave her there. It was quiet after, just quiet. He wouldn't lead them to the body. He wouldn't explain how he disposed of her belongings. "I don't want her mum to think awful things," he whispered once, before shutting down again. But the facts were finally laid bare. Mark Donnelly abducted Haley Brandt. She walked into his trap believing she was helping someone. There was no second man, no conspiracy. Just one quiet individual with time, opportunity, and the unremarkable face no one questions. 3 hours later, he was charged with first-degree murder, kidnapping, and unlawful disposal of a human body. As he was escorted from the room, de Medina looked at the chair Donnelly had left behind. A single indentation, still warm. Calloway, seated just outside the viewing area, wiped his mouth and muttered, "He took her because he thought he could, and he got away with it for 19 years. Not any more justice came early on a gray October morning, inside a quiet Michigan courtroom, with rows of press, former classmates, and strangers watching. Mark Donnelly stood and entered a guilty plea text. To the abduction and murder of Haley Brandt, there was no trial, no appeals, no elaborate forensic defenses, just one man in shackles admitting that he'd waited, watched, and struck, knowing full well no one would suspect him. The sentence, life without parole. No possibility of ever stepping 1 foot outside prison again. He showed no tears, no apology, just a blankness, the same porcelain stillness that had let him live undetected for nearly 2 decades, but the silence he once used to hide now belonged to someone else. Corinne Brandt stood before the court that morning with a single sheet of paper clutched in her hands. It trembled as she unfolded it. Her voice, raw but clear, rung the courtroom like a bell. "For 19 years I imagined a doorbell, a knock, a phone call. I imagined footsteps at midnight. I imagined her needing me, and me not being there. Now I wonder if she knew, if she realized he wasn't what he said he was, if she tried to scream, if she waited for me. I wondered how I would feel when I faced the man who ended her, killed the heartbeat of this town. And now I know I feel nothing. You get nothing from me." When she finished, every breath in the room held a heartbeat. Outside the courthouse, hundreds gathered on the front steps. Many hadn't spoken Haley's name aloud in years. Some didn't know why they showed up. Truth or guilt, maybe both. But they stood in silence as the sheriff confirmed, "After 19 years, justice has been served. But when a child vanishes and is never brought home, does justice ever feel complete?" Haley's body, was never found. Donnelly refused to provide exact details, claiming he couldn't remember where she'd been placed. Despite extensive aerial scans, ground-penetrating radar and cadaver dogs, the site of her final resting place remains unknown. In Grayridge, a small memorial now stands beside Brookwood Trail, a curved bench made of white granite, etched into its back. She walked home every day. Until the day the world changed. People leave scarves there in winter. Youth groups keep the trail cleared and well lit, something Haley never had. On the 20th anniversary, someone spray-painted a single line on the road near the trailhead. She deserved light. Josie never returned to town. But she sent a letter to Corinne, shared at the bench dedication. I talked to her in the car. When it rains, when the world feels too heavy, I still hope for the dream where she turns around and says, "I'm okay. I haven't had it yet." Detective Calloway, now fully retired, stays away from interviews. But when asked by a journalist if solving the case gave him peace, he gave a quiet answer. Peace doesn't come from answers. Not in this kind of story. But sleep? I can sleep again. Haley Brandt became more than a case, more than a face on a poster. She became a dividing line in a community story, before and after. An echo still caught in the trees, the kind of case we read about and hope never touches our street. The truth did come, eventually, but the damage it left still echoes even now.